Recently, my kids have been obsessed with the board game Clue. So every night while I do dishes, my oldest son sets up, and then we all do our best to figure out if it really was Miss Scarlet with the revolver in the lounge. But if that's not how you remember the movie, you're not imagining things. Because the movie Clue was actually shot with 3 different endings. In the second ending, Miss Peacock took the blame using a dagger in the dining room because she was accepting bribes for political favors. In the third version, everyone was guilty, which made things really confusing. But all of that confusion got me thinking about how fat loss over 40 is just like a game of Clue. But it's definitely like the third version. Because when it comes to fat loss advice, you have hundreds of diet gurus screaming that their strategy is the only way, leaving all of the players even more confused than ever. But here's what I learned after losing 50 pounds over 40 and keeping it off for 3 years. The real game isn't about finding the one guilty party. It's about learning how to play strategically. And just like in the actual board game, you won't get anywhere if you never roll the dice and start moving. But that first time you roll, you have no idea who the killer is, which weapon was used, or where the crime happened. You have to move through the mansion room by room, gathering and testing theories until you solve your version of the mystery. But here's where most women over 40 go wrong. They get stuck in that third movie ending mindset, thinking that everyone and everything is guilty. So you start by trying to solve the entire mystery on day 1, throwing every strategy at the wall. You go back to strict keto while combining that strategy with 24-hour fast, because that has to be the quickest way to lose weight. But then you think, what if instead I follow carnivore for my one meal and I tack on a calorie limit of only 1,000 per day? I mean, how could a strategy like that fail? But letting your little diet-obsessed brain strategize like this, that's like trying to guess the murderer, weapon, and location all before rolling the dice. You have to quit setting yourself up to lose by going all in right from the start. Because I've tried that many times, and I promise it never works. Let me show you how to actually start playing to win. Let's talk about the cards that you're originally dealt. In Clue, you know none of those cards are in the mystery envelope because you're holding them in your hand. With fat loss, maybe one of the cards you're holding is keto, because you've restarted keto at least 5 times, and even though you lose weight quickly those first few weeks, you always end up falling off track and regaining every pound. Another card you're holding is a low-calorie diet, because that's something that you have been testing for 20 years, and if it hasn't worked by now, chances are it never will. And maybe you've got the intermittent fasting card. Even though your best friend lost 20 pounds in a month with alternate day fasting, the last time you tried to fast, you had a pounding headache by 3 p.m. Plus, she's already regained everything, which is another clue that that's not the right plan for you. So now you know to keep those cards in your hand to remind yourself that those are definitely not the answer pile. But here's where strategy comes in. Because instead of seeing these as failures, now you're holding valuable information. You know what doesn't work for you, which means you can play smarter than everyone else who's still just guessing blindly. But here's how you win at Fat Loss Clue. You move strategically from room to room, making educated guesses while paying close attention to the clues that your body is sending. And since I've been playing the game for over 30 years, let me show you which educated guesses you should start with. Your first strategic move? Test the protein hypothesis, which is eating up to 1 gram of protein per pound of your target weight. But you may be wondering why this is your first move. It's because protein is the most filling macro, which means you'll naturally eat less without feeling deprived. So if your goal weight is 150 pounds, aim for 150 grams of protein per day. But that number is really just your stretch goal. Because even if you only hit 0.7 grams per pound of your target weight, you will still make great progress. Going back to that 150-pound weight loss goal, eating 0.7 grams of protein per pound is only 105 grams of protein. If you aim for 35 grams of protein with every meal, which is really only 3 to 5 ounces of chicken, fish, or lean meat, you'll hit that 105-gram target by the end of the day. And since you're already tracking your food in order to hit your protein, you might as well get even more strategic by paying attention to how many calories you're eating, which brings us to our next clue. Next, you'll move to the Calorie Conservatory. which, even though many dieters only visit this room 4 or 5 days each week, it's really open all 7 days. To get the most out of this room, start by calculating a moderate calorie deficit for your height, weight, age, and activity level. Then track everything you eat to stay within 100 calories of that goal every day, especially on weekends. And tracking on weekends is vital since most dieters who struggle with consistent fat loss, they assume that this room shuts down every weekend. So you spend 4 or 5 days busting your butt in a deficit during the week, only to blow all of that hard work with a weekend surplus. If weekends are your downfall, you have 2 strategic fixes. First, you can eat slightly less during the week so you have more calories to work with on weekends. And second, be sure to track every meal, paying special attention to high-calorie restaurant meals that can easily derail an entire week's worth of progress. Which brings us to the next room, Movement Hall, where you add more movement to your day. But just like the Calorie Conservatory, this isn't a room you visit whenever you feel like it. If you want consistent fat loss, you need to visit this room consistently, which means working up to 7,000 to 10,000 steps most days. Here's the plot twist. Moving more doesn't just boost your calorie burn. It also helps you follow the rules of the Calorie Conservatory because movement suppresses appetite. And not to be Captain Obvious in a game that is filled with strategy, but the less hunger you have to deal with, the easier it is to stick with your calorie deficit. Which brings us to the Strength Training Ballroom. Yes, I said ballroom, because just calling it a gym is boring. Let's keep this fancy to keep you interested. Because most women over 40 have zero interest in visiting this room, like ever. But if you're not hitting this room at least 2 times a week for a full body session, a good chunk of the weight you're losing is muscle, not fat. And when you keep losing muscle, especially over 40, you won't have the strength to keep playing this game for long, which is when you start regaining every pound. Plus, all that protein that you're eating in the protein library, you're not really putting it to use without building muscle to go with it. Since losing fat over 40 ain't easy, you need every strategic advantage that you can get. And building lean muscle is the strategy that should be at the top of your list. Unless you're still a stranger to this next room, the sleep study. Because if your hormones are going bonkers, leaving you wide awake at 2 a.m. wondering if you should just get up, then this actually needs to be the first room you visit. And you need to stay here until you figure it out. Even though most women over 40 view high quality sleep and low stress as nice to haves, they're actually murder weapons being used to sabotage your progress every night you don't get them dialed in. So this needs to be your priority if you ever want to win the fat loss game. Now here's the brilliant thing about this game. Each clue supports the others. More protein makes it easier to stay in your calorie deficit and makes it possible to build more metabolism boosting muscle. More movement boosts your deficit while also making it easier to eat less since you're just not as hungry. And once you get enough sleep and keep your stress levels contained, sticking with all of these habits becomes about 1 billion times easier. But here's where your payoff for sticking around to the end of this video comes in. Because most people have the attention span of a gnat and bounce to research 24-hour fasting videos like 6 minutes ago, which I could have saved them a ton of time because all you do with that strategy is not eat for 24 hours. That's it. Oh, and then you will lose a ton of weight. It's all water and muscle. Don't do it. Unlike the actual game of Clue, you don't have to start from scratch because I figured out every game piece that you need to move. Now it's up to you to figure out how to fit them strategically into your life. The big 5 clues of sustainable fat loss include more protein, aiming for a minimum of 0.7 grams per target weight up to 1 gram per pound, moderate calorie deficit that you stick to on weekends and weekdays, more movement, aiming for 7,000 to 10,000 steps daily for calorie burn and appetite control, strength training with 2 full body workouts each week to preserve muscle and boost metabolism, sleep and stress management, which is a non-negotiable for hormone balance. Every other must-do strategy that you scroll past, those are just minor tweaks you can add if they make the game easier for you, but none of them are required to win. Like those 24-hour fasts, because I'm telling you, that 1 pound you lost overnight was maybe like this much fat. The key to finally winning the fat loss game is testing strategically, one room at a time, while paying attention to what works for your body, your schedule, and your life after 40. Remember, in Clue, you only win with strategy and patience. You'll never solve the mystery with wild guesses or by trying every possible combination at once. Fat loss after 40 works the exact same way. Roll the dice, start moving, test theories strategically, and pay attention to the clues that your body is giving you. The difference between this game and Clue, there's no one killer solution. And even though your winning combination might be different from mine, I promise that these 5 cards are in every winning hand. So what's your first move? Let us know in the comments which room you're entering first. And if you want to see how I put all of these strategies together for my winning fat loss plan that helped me lose 50 pounds over 40, watch this video next. You'll learn the exact plan I use with my coaching clients so you finally feel like you're actually in the game.